Hey, Fight fans, welcome back to Carlo Prusa MMA. We got a good interview today for you. No, actually, we got a great interview today for you. We got Nate, the great Marquardt, UFC vet, StrikeForce vet, Pancrase vet. He is an absolute legend. Nate, how are you doing tonight, man? You're all the way other side of the world. It's Friday morning for you.
Yeah, I'm doing well. I'm here in Myanmar, in just north of Yangon in Myanmar. So.
Very cool. So what are you doing out there exactly? What are some of the mission work and projects that you're working on out there?
Well, so we're connected with a couple children's homes out here, and we opened a school for the children here. So, yeah, God called us out here about a year ago, and so we ended up here back in April of this year. And so we've been starting the school and doing some other ministries, but that's the main ministry we've started here.
You know, obviously, during the prime of your competition career, you've had some of the biggest promotions in the world, fought some of the toughest opponents in the world. You feel like now, life outside of fighting, is this your opportunity to give back?
Yeah, but it's more than that. I feel like, I grew up in a Christian home my whole life, and my family is Christian, but I never really gave my life to the Lord until I was 33 years old. And at that point, actually, I was going to retire from fighting because I felt like I was fighting my whole life, and it was kind of a selfish ambition. And then, but God kept me in fighting until I retired end of 2017. And so yeah, God had me on that path. But I feel like it's not just like giving back. It's like back when I was 33, I gave my life to the Lord. So it wasn't just about something after I was done fighting. It was even back then. I started seminary when I was still in the UFC, and even before that, I was involved in ministry and just trying to follow the path that God had for me at that point. So, yeah.
You know, obviously, you're an absolute legend in the sport. You've been doing it for a long time. You did this at a time when it was not cool. You did this at a time where people were calling it human cockfighting. It wasn't legal at every state. People thought this was like criminal, barbaric activity. What was it like in the early days, man? You know, a lot of people calling it the wild, wild west. I've heard horror stories of guys fighting outside barns, mystery opponents. You, though, you fought for Boss Ruden's League. You fought a very respectful organization out of the gate. What was it like trying to find a fight back then?
Yeah, it was definitely, I mean, it can still be a little sketchy, to be honest. But, yeah, I mean, I had a couple gym fights, I remember. But I feel like all of my fights that I had and all the organizations I fought for, they were actually trying to promote mixed martial arts. And even though back then it wasn't even called mixed martial arts when I first started, people called it different things. They called it like full contact fighting or Vale Tudo or whatever. And so everyone kind of landed on mixed martial arts as the respectable and proper term for the sport. But yeah, I mean, I think I was blessed again that God had me on a path, even though I wasn't really following him at that point. So,
no, back then, did you ever envision that mixed martial arts would turn into what it is today?
Yeah, actually, I mean, I would say, yeah, because I really thought the potential, I knew it was the most entertaining sport for me. Of course, I thought it was the best sport in the world. And I remember going to a hockey game, and as soon as the guys started fighting, everyone stood up and started cheering. And it's like, well, you've been watching this hockey game, not doing not reacting like that. So I knew that I knew it would be popular. It just, people had to understand it. And I think the UFC definitely did a good job educating people in America and maybe some of the Western world. And, in Asia and I think Japan, it was already in their culture with, the judos in the high schools and things like that. So I think in Japan, it was a lot more accepted early on.
Before your time,
Obviously.
before your time in the
Sorry.
UFC, before your time in StrikeForce, you got to fight for promotion. Pancrase, I think that's a promotion a lot of the newer fans don't really know about, but I think it's such a legendary promotion. Obviously, the open palm striking. Overall, what did you think of your time there? What did you think of that style of fighting?
Well, so I actually, when I had my first fight in Pancrase, they started actually they had their first year. They had what they called Vale Tudo, which is there was only 2 rules. I think no biting, no eye gouging, and maybe no groin strikes was the 3rd rule actually. And so then they were also doing the palm striking. Then the next year they changed the rules. So I think they still did the palm striking for some special matches, but pretty much the whole organization switched over to rules similar to Pride, where you could kick on the ground but no elbows. And so, yeah, I mean, but for sure, like I grew up watching guys like Boss Rutan and Frank Shamrock and Ken Shamrock and watching them with the old rules, the old, palm striking, and then watching them in the UFC. And so it was pretty cool actually to go over there and be able to train with some of the guys I'd watched, and it was pretty eye-opening for me.
During your time at Pancrase, a situation that people still talk about to this day, obviously your matchup against Ricardo Almeida. Looking back at that situation now, years later, what are your thoughts on it?
Well, so what happened when I don't know. I think you're just referring to like at the end of the fight where
correct.
He held on to a guillotine and I tapped, and he held it a couple extra seconds longer than the ref was like breaking this up. And so when I came out of it, I was just out of like fight or flight. I punched him, and then as soon as I did it, I was like telling him sorry, and but Renzo had jumped in the ring and tried to kick me in the head. And so anyway, like we talked shortly after, and just we I think they understood completely, and that it was just a reaction, and maybe he should have let go a little bit sooner. But yeah, like since then I've gone to Renzo's gym and trained with him and stuff. So yeah, it's just water under the bridge. But
do you remember where you were when you got the call that you were signed to the UFC?
Sure. I think when I first found out about it, I was living in Aurora, Colorado, and I was just in my kitchen with my wife, and found out about it and was pretty super excited. Yeah, it was kind of a dream come true for me, and even for my wife. She knew that it was a really big deal. So
during your time in the UFC, obviously you fought some of the best in the world here. I mean, Anderson Silva, Tali Slates, Damian Maia, Paul Harris, Tyron Woodley, Rusmir Paul Harris, so many great guys, CB Dalloway. What was it like, being able to headline events and fight some of the best guys in the world?
It was definitely, I mean, I didn't really think of the guys as, I mean, now looking back, I can see wow, those are a lot of really good fighters. But especially at the time, I knew they were good fighters, but I also knew I was a good fighter and just had confidence. So at the time, it was more, I wasn't thinking about that. I guess I was more just focused on the fight itself and everything that I had to do to be ready and to perform my best in those fights.
You've had so many great performances. One that sticks out to me, the fight against Damian Maia. That knockout, something I'll always remember. Do you remember the finish? Can you walk me through it?
Yeah. Basically, I remember watching. Well, so I think actually, I don't know if it was on I think it was like on a little training clip of his that he was working with. Not Anderson. So he was working with. Oh goodness sakes, I can't remember that. So he was working with someone on this like left high kick, but I could see when he was training it that there was like a split second where it was telegraphed, and he would just throw the kick. He wouldn't throw anything in front of it. So I actually hurt my leg just before the fight, my ankle, and so I couldn't push backwards. And one of my normal counters, I would push off of that foot and then throw a low kick, and so I couldn't do that counter. And I was thinking, okay, what's the best counter for this? And I talked to my buddy Dwayne Ludwig, and he said, oh, if you see that he's going to do it, you just step in and throw the right hand, and you beat him, like, you beat him to the punch. And so drilled that a few times, and that was it. It was like just a really small thing. But it was like, just the fact that I saw that he was going to do that, I had it in my mind. Okay, this is what I'm going to do if I notice it. And sure enough, right off the bat, he threw one kick, and I stepped out of the way of it. And then I said, okay, if he does it again, I'm just going to throw the punch. And so as he threw it, I stepped in and punched. And so the rotation of his body from throwing the kick, and also he, like when you kick, your hips come up a little bit. So his body was coming up and twisting. And then when I hit him, it's like everything collided all at once, and he did kind of a 180 and flew up into the air, and then landed kind of face down, and that was it. That was the whole fight.
After the first stint in the UFC, you went over to a promotion that was awesome back in the day, StrikeForce. You found a lot of luck in there. You held a title. First fight, the fight that got you the title, obviously Tyron Woodley, the guy who would turn into one of the best 170ers that we'll ever see. Obviously, you're able to finish him there. What was that moment like to be able to win gold?
That was a really good moment because I'd worked really hard for that. I trained really hard, and yeah, just kind of, it was definitely one of the peaks in my career. And Tyron he was undefeated at that point, and he was super tough, super strong, super great athlete, great wrestler. And it took being in the best shape and being one of my best performances of my career to beat him like that. And even for him, it was a great performance. I mean, he had, I think, one knockdown in the first round and one in the third. He knocked me down twice, in the fight, and I knocked him down once in the first round, and finished him in the fourth. And it was a really good fight. So that's probably, I would say, my favorite fight of my career, as far as just kind of looking across the board. Had great grappling, great striking, really entertaining. So, yeah.
You were one of the first guys that I think really embodied what it was to be a complete mixed martial artist. You've always had really good grappling. You always had really good striking. At what point in the career did you really start thinking, if I want to do this at the highest level, that I had to be well-rounded?
really that was from the beginning, because when I first saw mixed martial arts, I've watched the first 3 UFCs on VHS, and so I decided, okay, I need to find a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu gym, and there were really only 2 gyms that I knew of that I could find that taught any kind of ground fighting. So I went to one that was more of a traditional Jiu-Jitsu club, and then I went to another one, which was actually a karate school that also had Jiu-Jitsu, and the instructor, he's my first coach, Alistair McNiven. He kind of said, this is what we teach, and you want to be able to fight everywhere. You don't want to just fight on the ground. And that made sense to me, that, you want to be well-rounded. And it was soon after that I started training with wrestlers as well, because they controlled the takedowns, and then just seeing their toughness and how even on the ground they were super strong, even if they didn't know jiu-jitsu. So I started training wrestling a couple years into my training as well. So,
you had the honor to fight at the time that I call the golden era of mixed martial arts. It was a time where you didn't see as much of the product. Back then you'd have a pay-per-view every month. Maybe you'd have one fight night. Now you have like 40 plus UFC shows a year. You have PFL, Bellator, Bare Knuckle, One. If you really wanted to, with the regional promotion on Fight Pass, you could probably watch 4 events a week. I mean, you're so much of it. Do you feel like the aura and the mystique in today's current world of mixed martial arts is not what it was when you guys were fighting?
It's definitely different. I don't know that it's necessarily, I mean, this is kind of, that's what we wanted. That's what, as fighters and as fans, I would say that's what we wanted. That for sure, it made it really special when there was only one show per month, or sometimes you'd have to wait more than a month to watch an event from either UFC or Pride. That was, kind of it back in the day. So there's definitely a difference, but I think that's what we wanted. And I think it's pretty cool to see the up and comers. There's a lot of young guys that are really good, really early on in their career. There you can see the high level, especially, I mean, nowadays guys are training for MMA since they were kids. And so by the time they turn pro, they're really, really good. So yeah, it's pretty cool to watch. The one thing that is hard about it for me, like as a fan or as someone who I would like to follow it, but I just can't. I can't follow it the way to be really knowledgeable about who's fighting and who's. So I watch some of the big fights, and that's about it, because there's so many guys. I mean, it would just take so much time, and I'm pretty busy these days, so it's so it's kind of I guess it's a trade-off, but I think it's a good thing that it is the way it is.
You just talked about, obviously, in this day and age, it's so culturally accepted that kids are starting jiu-jitsu at 7 years old. They're starting wrestling at 7 years old. By the time they're 18, they start amateur fights. By the time they're 23, 24, these guys might have 9 or 10 pro bouts under their belt. Is that just some of the reasons why we're seeing this evolution of skill level?
Yep, exactly. Yeah, and I think guys are even starting amateur fights are earlier. I mean, I know in Europe they are. I've seen fights with young kids in their teens, or even even younger, where they're doing amateur fights with headgear and gloves and all that, but still MMA rules. So yeah, for sure, that's it. If they've done it, and they can learn the basics, and they can make their own modifications for their own style, they're going to be wonderful fighters.
You know, in this day and age of mixed martial arts, one thing that we really see is personality and entertainment. You have guys who put on characters. They put on people they're completely not. Why? Because they know that's going to get them a title shot. Knows they're going to get bigger paydays. In your day, obviously, I think Tito was one of the first guys to do it. I think Tank Abbott had a little bit. I think Frank Trigg had a little bit. Chael Sonnen started turning up the notch. Conor McGregor comes around. The whole landscape of mixed martial arts changes. How do you think personality and entertainment has impacted mixed martial arts?
I would say more in a negative way, to be honest, because I love the sport of MMA, and I don't mind if there's some kind of story that's real, but when it's like fake and it's the problem is that really these guys are role models for kids, and they're showing how to like hate someone, and how to trash talk someone, how to talk badly about someone, and how to be prideful, and just everything bad that you could think of. That's really what the sport is promoting at this point, from not all the organizations, and not all the fighters, obviously. But so actually, I think that's a very negative thing. And it's one of the reasons why I would choose not to watch someone, and not to pay for their pay-per-view or whatever, is because they have a filthy mouth, or just a bad personality, someone I wouldn't want my kids looking up to. And so yeah, I mean I know people think the sport is all about money, but actually not for everyone, and not for every fighter as well. So you can be a successful fighter and not trash talk everybody, and you can just be yourself. And I don't think it needs that. I would say entertainment aspect, but it is the sport itself is entertaining, and following people's personal stories, that's entertaining, and that's like a real story. But yeah, when you have people that are just, well, and also, I mean, there are people that are actually that way too. So so you have that problem as well anyway. But yeah, so that's why I have a friend in Armenia, and his dream is to start a Christian MMA organization. And the more he talks about it, the more it makes sense. It's like, because you want your kids to look up to fighters who are respectable, who treat their opponents with respect and honor. And yeah, you can learn about their stories, you can learn about their hardships and the things they've gone through, and what their passion is, what their dreams are, whatever, everything about them. And that can be entertaining, and but I don't think you need to do all the antics personally.
So many people in this day and age watch mixed martial arts, and they see the John Joneses, they see the Usmans, the Woodleys, and they're like, wow, it must be the best life ever to be a fighter in the UFC. Little do they know, battling it out on the regional scene in the smaller shows, you're not making much money doing this, man. A lot of guys have 9-to-5 jobs. A lot of guys are losing money to do it. The kids, they have wives. You have to pay a gym membership to train. You have to deal with a bunch of killers who want it just as bad as you. Hard sparring, wake up early, train late, do it over and over. Then obviously when you make it to the bigger fights and everything, sure, the finances improve, but you're still missing birthdays, anniversaries, trips, vacations. You did this for a very long time. What made you stick determined and kept punching and kicking through all the sacrifices?
Well, I would say when I was single, that's easy, because you can just block everyone out and do what you need to do. And like you said, the finances were horrible in the beginning. So, but I could live in my friend's basement or my mom's basement or wherever, and so, but I think for me, what made it possible and practical was having a really good wife and a supportive wife who, she supported me. She supported my career. She also made sacrifices so that we could, so that I could fight, and that so it would benefit our family, so that I could provide for our family. And I would say that that's the biggest thing. So, I mean, even though maybe I was missing out on, like you said, some birthdays or whatever, every day I got to go home and see my wife and see my kids, and every practice really. So actually, I was very blessed that I was able to spend a lot of time with my kids and teaching them and raising them. So, and a lot of time with my wife as well. So I'm very thankful for that.
Do you take pride in knowing that you were one of those part of that core group of guys that helped pave the sport and made it possible for the guys doing it today?
No, I don't. No, I don't take pride. I think what I'm doing now is helping a little bit, because we're running a Christian school, but in the mornings we do devotions, and then we do our morning workout, and I'm teaching them mixed martial arts, teaching them boxing, kickboxing, wrestling, grappling. So it's pretty cool because fighting, like they have Letway out here, which is like Muay Thai with no gloves, and you're allowed to headbutt, and that's pretty popular. And then Ong La Song and one other fighter who was in the UFC, or who's in the UFC currently, they're super popular out here. But aside from that, the MMA, there's a couple gyms, but the level is really low. So I think that'll be good for the country here if we can get a few guys that have skill in every area.
For you personally, what does it mean to call yourself a mixed martial artist?
I don't know. I mean, to me, that's just, I love mixed martial arts, and it was a way that I was able to provide for my family, and also it was a platform that I was able to, and still am able to, preach about salvation through Jesus Christ. So, it's, I think you can do that with anything though. So I don't necessarily think it's so special. I mean, I personally love it, and I think a lot of other people really like MMA, but in the end, it is just a platform. It is just a job, because things in this life are going to pass, and what's left is what really matters.
All right, Nate, last question for you. What's the mark you're trying to leave behind? What is the mission? Fighting's done now. What's the goal moving forward?
The goal is the same as, like I said, when I turned 33, my goal was not for me anymore. It was for Jesus, who saved me. And so my goal in life is to lift up his name and make disciples. And so I want people to get saved. I want people to know that there's salvation in no other name. Buddha cannot save you. He's dead, and Muhammad's dead as well. But and there is a God. To all the atheists, there is a God. We know this because of creation. And so we're here, and there is a God, and there is a judgment day that's coming, and Jesus is the only way to be saved. So that's what I want people to know. And I want the people that believe it, I want them to actually follow it with their whole hearts. And that's what God wants too. So.
Awesome, Nate. Well, hey, man, thank you so much for taking time out of your morning to talk with me. It's an absolute honor and pleasure to speak with you, my friend.
Thank you, brother. God bless you.
Absolutely. That's it for us tonight. That is the great Mr. Nate Marquardt from Carl Prusa. Stick around, Fight Fans.